Everybody needs a hero. They are our idols, our role models, who can inspire us for the better. One of the most famous heroes is Alexander the Great, who conquered the whole known world of his time at a very young age. However, his rapidly forged empire collapsed just as fast as it was built, and his son and heir was killed at age 13 by one of his men. Why did his legacy broke so fast? Perhaps he was a tragic hero who was simply betrayed by his own men. Or perhaps he was not as great as it might seem at first sight. Well, let's find out. We are curious. We're looking for the reasons. We want to find the truth. But we tend to forget that truth starts with ourselves. Look behind the mirror and find the path. According to Aristotle, greatness in real life, which means real, useful knowledge, both in politics and ethics, cannot be acquired from textbooks, as for example the Pythagorean Theorem, or computer language. Greatness in real life is a more important and more sophisticated skill that should be acquired by following the examples set by great men who had already mastered this skill from their predecessors. This is the reason why you should choose your heroes well, because the only way to achieve greatness in real life, however small it might be, is to follow the lead of great people. If you are lucky, your first heroes are your mom and dad, but this is just the first step towards greatness. Later you have to find other heroes. Some of them are not even real people, only legendary figures of mythical tales like Robin Hood. These fictional characters usually show you a few traits of greatness like braveness and loyalty through their story, but they are not real people who could exist, or at least could be very successful in real life. Real heroes you find in our past, in our history. People who achieved great things and helped build the world in which we are living now. Have you ever wondered why the Romans and not the Greeks, who were way better in science and philosophy, built the greatest empire of the ancient West? Once the Greeks also had a really good chance. Everybody knows that Alexander III of Macedon was a great hero. You can see plenty of videos about his great deeds here on YouTube as well. And in the sense that he was a successful general who won many battles and defeated the Persian Empire, yes, he was a great hero. However, in India, against the small tribal states of the Indus River, he wasn't so successful. He nearly died at the siege of Multan, and his army rebelled against him and forced him to retreat, which almost led to a disaster in Persia proper again, because Alexander chose the way harder road through the desert and the mountains back to Babylonia, instead of the safer coastal road. A century earlier, the great Herodotus warned the Athenians to do not expand their territory over certain borders, because that would cost them their whole empire. And it did. Alexander didn't listen to his wise words either, and clearly stretched his empire too far. Alexander's policies to consolidate his rule were also not too successful. For example, first he married Roxana, the daughter of a simple nobleman from Bactria, for no reason. Then he married two Persian princesses at the same time and forced more than 10,000 of his men to also marry Persian and Babylonian women at the famous Susa weddings. The fact that almost all of his men divorced their Persian and Babylonian wives after his death shows how thoughtful and popular this decision was. But let's go back to his military successes. 2 centuries before Alexander, the Persian Empire, built from nothing by Cyrus the Great, was a huge threat for the freedom of the Greek city-states. However, at the time of Alexander, it wasn't the case at all. The Greek world stretched from Crimea to Libya, from Asia Minor to Italy and Provence. Greek art, science, philosophy, commerce, economy were all at their peak. And Alexander's father, Philip II, built a never-before-seen power from the small peripheral kingdom of Macedon, uniting most of the Greek city-states at the first time in history. It was Philip II's idea to conquer Persia. He sent the first Macedon troops to the other side of the Bosporus, led by his most prominent and reliable general, Parmenion. Alexander inherited the best army of the world from his father and the plan for conquer. Yes, he successfully used this army, realized his father's dream and conquered the whole Persian Empire. Then his son inherited nothing from him but poison that ended the boy's life at age 13. On the other hand, Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, did not inherit the best army of the world. He was only the leader of the Persian tribes, which were under the rule of the Median Empire. Still, he successfully defeated the Medes, then the famous empire of Babylon, and finally the fabled wealthy king of Lydia, Croesus, basically conquering the same territory as Alexander 2 centuries later. but we usually never hear of Cyrus the Great. Moreover, Cyrus's policies were quite thoughtful and popular. He freed the Jews, let them go home to Israel, even gave them money to rebuild their sacred first temple in Jerusalem. Although the empire had a state religion called Zoroastrianism, he was entirely tolerant to the religions, customs, and cultures of the conquered people. He also reorganized the traditional structure of Middle Eastern empires, installing the system of satraps, a kind of territorial government heavily based on native participation. For example, to shed some light on the difference of character between Cyrus and Alexander, when there were allegations of treason against one of the sons of Parmenion, the best and probably the most faithful general of Alexander, Alexander sent assassins to kill not just Parmenion's son, but Parmenion himself too. While according to Herodotus, Cyrus not only spared the life of his most fearful enemy, Croesus, the wealthy king of Lydia, he later on employed him as one of his most important and experienced advisors, both in his court and the satrapia of Lydia. There's a reason that Cyrus's empire was flourishing for 2 centuries before Alexander's arrival, while the successful and long-lasting Hellenistic empires weren't founded by Alexander, but by Seleucus in Mesopotamia and Ptolemy in Egypt. Everybody knows that one of Alexander's teachers was Aristotle, who was perhaps the greatest scientist and philosopher in the whole antiquity. Yes, it's true that Alexander's father, who probably knew Aristotle since their childhood, asked him to teach his son. However, if we read Aristotle's books on politics, ethics, and society, or perhaps we should say on greatness in life, it will soon be clear that Alexander didn't use this extraordinary opportunity for the better of his people at all. Unfortunately, there's almost nothing in common in Aristotle's teachings and Alexander's deeds. Alexander was a gifted general who was lucky enough to also possess the best army of the world. But imagined himself a god, was reckless in battle, putting his men into unnecessary risks so many times, and lived an intemperate life of pleasures that ended his life at age 33. If you like alternate history, perhaps you should ask, what if Alexander's father, Philip II, who forged the Macedonian Empire from nothing, would have lived 20 more years? What would have happened if he himself could realize his own dream? So, from our point of view, although Alexander was a great general, winning so many battles, his legacy rather belongs to the territory of legends than to the territory of successful historical achievements. We really need heroes, especially at hard times. But it isn't necessarily true that real heroes come from the battlefield. Perhaps Aristotle was a greater hero than his young and reckless pupil. What do you think? Who is your hero? And why? In this video, we've talked about heroes and Alexander the Great. It's important to find real heroes and follow their lead, because true greatness in life cannot be learned from textbooks. However, it's not easy to find real heroes, because there are no exact rules to what makes them real heroes. As we've seen, even the spectacular victories at the battlefield were enough to make Alexander one. Life is more complicated than that. Next time we'll deal with artificial intelligence. AI is in the focus of attention today, and our main concern with it is, of course, that at some point it will take control and wipe us all out. Most science fiction stories like to play with the idea of the rise of the machines, but do we really have to worry about this grim scenario? In our next video, we'll do our best to explain why this outcome we tend to fear will never come. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe, and remember, always look behind the mirror.